I want to share with you our hack to saving over 50% per year on our expenses and show you exactly how we do that with this digital nomadic lifestyle. We get this question all the time when we run into people. Right now, we're actually on a cruise. We're going from Florida to Europe and we're spending 2 weeks. And the cost for 2 weeks for two people, all inclusive, basically everything, was about $4,000. We get all asked all the time, if you're doing this lifestyle and you're going to all these great cities, this must cost you so much money. I want to share with you why it costs a lot less than you think, why this is our hack against rapidly increasing prices and inflation, especially in the USA. Recently, we were in Japan. You can see Tokyo listed here. I'll talk about this screen in a moment. And the biggest shock for me is we would walk out of restaurants, and sometimes our lunch would be 15 to 20 USD for two people, full lunch, maybe even a couple drinks, two beers. Dinner, a lot of times, was $30 to $40 at most for two people. Now, I'm not talking going to get a Wagyu or a Kobe beef dinner, but I'm talking a really good dinner at a restaurant, all in with, tip because there isn't any, taxes and everything else. We then came back to the US recently just for a couple days in order to get onto this repositioning cruise, and it was culture shock for us that we couldn't believe how much a lunch and a dinner were at the hotel while we were waiting for our flights in order to get onto this cruise. It was 2 to 3 times as much. So this video is all about how you can save a lot actually enjoying this type of lifestyle. And then I'm going to show you what our specific expenses in our first year of doing this versus when we were living back at home in Austin and mixing between living at home in Austin and doing some traveling. It's going to be shocking when you see the differences in numbers. Now on the screen, I have a website which we've done other videos on, and this is Nomad List. And this is a really great place if you want to start to get some ideas on places that you can go and explore. For instance, if I was to look at Tokyo, you can see it gives you a quick snapshot of the overall experience, the safety, the cost, and you can see Bangkok is number one. So over the last few months, we've been in Bangkok, we've been in Tokyo, we've been in Chiang Mai, we've been in Kuala Lumpur, and there's a lot of destinations here. Pretty much any place you can think of is in here. But why this site can be useful, number one, is it gives you a rough idea of what things might cost. So if you click in onto, for instance, Tokyo, where we were recently, it gives you its estimate of what it would cost you per month. What I find is the cost of living as a nomad, if you're really watching all your expenses, this can be fairly accurate. I would say this is on the low end of the estimates, but it is doable if you want to watch your expenses. It also gives you estimates on a family, what hotels might cost versus Airbnb. So you have a lot of good data here. If you want to dig deeper, go over to Numbeo, which again, we've also done videos and articles on our blog, and I'll post links in the video down below. I'm going to go ahead and type in Kuala Lumpur. This was a city that we were at recently. And this is going to give us a really nice, detailed list of what expenses look like. It's not going to be perfect. When I've compared this when we've been on the ground in these locations, it's pretty accurate. It tells me right now a family of four, estimated cost about 2,000 USD. A single person, $545. Now again, I feel this is on the low end. If you want a better lifestyle, not be watching all your expenses, going out to eat and that sort of thing, I would add 50% to these expenses. But still in the USA, can you imagine being somewhere for a family of four at 3,000 USD per month? That's adding 50%. We were there for the entire month, and it was very inexpensive in most categories. The next thing you want to do is compare it to where you live. So I live in Austin, Texas, when we're not doing the digital nomadic lifestyle. So this is going to be a very interesting comparison. So it tells me right away that prices are lower by 52% than in Austin. And that's a very realistic number because in this case, I'm not saying add 50%, because if you looked up Austin, I would probably say the same thing. I'm going to look it up in a moment and tell you whether I think it's realistic. 52% lower. You're going to find even more dramatic ones. This is absolutely worth looking at. I pulled up Austin, Texas, and they're giving an estimate for a family of four. It came up with about $4,200, as you can see. You can go ahead and make adjustments here. If you're somebody who eats out a lot more, let's say you're somebody who eats out more than 10% of the time, you can go ahead and make adjustments and get even a more specific one to you. This is going to adjust your bottom line, and then you just submit that when you make your changes. And you can see all the way up to $7,000 per month. And I'm starting to see that's pretty accurate, especially if you eat out a bit more. And that's a family of four, of course. That's really helpful with Numbeo for you to do that. And look, the bottom line is inflation, it's a lot right now. This is on a site called trueflation.com. And this is their Big Mac index. You can see back, if we go about a little bit over 10 years ago, a Big Mac was about $3.50. And now it's up to about $5.69. This tends to almost double over 10 years. It's going to double again, maybe even more over the next 10 years. As you know, inflation has been extremely high, and all of you have felt it. This is a really great way to arbitrage and bring your expenses down dramatically by living part of your year or even all of your year in other places that are not experiencing the same level of inflation and already started at a lower base. Do you realize that the big bulk, the majority now of inflation is actually corporate profits? You could call it corporate greed. Most of inflation is actually coming from corporations, not as a result of their expenses increasing. In fact, recently, 53% of inflation that you're experiencing are coming from profits, meaning you're adding and contributing to more profits in corporations. And you can see there's a million articles if you want to read about it in Google. So again, is this going to stop? Do you think this is going to end? I don't. There's going to be no end to this. So inflation is going to continue to be a problem. So let me finish this now, and I want to share with you what our first year of being digital nomads looked like versus the prior year when we were living in Austin and doing travel as well. In a way, we were double spending for many things because we had rent in Austin and all those expenses, plus we had expenses when we wanted to travel as well, and we were always paying for both at the same time. Now, I realize there's a lot going on this spreadsheet, but don't worry, don't panic if you're not a spreadsheet person. I'm going to make it really easy for you. What I've done here is I just spelled out for March 2023 when we started and the places we visited. Sometimes it was a country I listed because we went to various cities. Other times I listed cities. And if we did a cruise, we cruised quite a bit on repositioning, as well as can be a really cheap way to spend 2 weeks with all your food, your room, your entertainment, many times your drinks, and it can be a really pleasant way to do that. Plus, we were able to work remotely with high-speed internet. So I marked that down as well. And you can see, look how many places we went over the last year. I mean, think about what this would maybe cost you in your current life if you went to, in the next year, Madrid and Portugal and Amsterdam, Mexico and San Miguel de Allende, various U.S. cities, New York City. I mean, I didn't look for cheap places. I mean, we didn't actually try to travel at the cheapest places like Southeast Asia or down in South America. You can see we went to a lot of Western European countries. We went to Australia and Sydney and Melbourne. We had some Asia, which will bring your costs down. I've got Las Vegas here. So clearly, we didn't make a huge effort to save a ton of money. When we're in these cities and these countries and locations, we really don't try to save money. We stay at nice places, nice hotels, nice Airbnbs. We go to good restaurants. This is not budget travel for us, but it can be for you. That's why everybody is different. Now, for that reason, I didn't necessarily want to put down what I spent in a month in March 2023 because it really doesn't matter compared to what you might spend. Maybe you're somebody who's got to stay to Four Seasons, or maybe you're somebody that doesn't mind a Holiday Inn. We're all different. So I kind of wanted to deal in percentages because I think a percentage will sort of tell you the story way better. What I did is I added up the monthly expenses during our nomadic year, and that included coming back to Austin multiple times, by the way. And then I said, what's the average per month, and how much did I spend per month on that average? So let's just say that my average, for an example, was $5,000, for the year. It was not. It was different. But that would mean on this month, we spent about 50% of our average for the year. And on this month, we spent a little bit above our average, which would make sense because we spent part of the month in New York City, which is very expensive. As you know, this month we spent even more, but you can see we moved around a lot. We were in a very expensive country in Iceland. We had a cruise. We were in Dublin. We were in Portugal. We probably had a lot of flights and moving around, so this was more expensive. But again, if my average was $5,000, this just means I spent $6,000 this month. This one would be right in around $5,000. This month I would have spent closer to $4,000. That's what the percentages are. The next big thing to look at is what happened the year before when we lived in Austin and we also traveled. All right, so what I did here is I compared my monthly expense in March 2022 to my monthly expense in March 2023. So that literally means in March 2022, I spent 300% more than what I spent in 2023. Yes, 3 times as much. Well, let's just say when I was traveling remotely and I spent, $4,000 a month here. That means this would have cost me $12,000 this month, March, comparing just month over month. I mean, look how this goes. Look at every month. This was 298% more than this. So again, if this was, let's just put a number out. Let's just say this was $4,000 a month. That means I would have spent $12,000 a month in Austin. Look at how high these are, 254, 329. Finally, a month which was pretty comparable. That was the best possible month. The worst month was over 3 times as much, and that frequently we spent over double, right? How many times do you see 200% or more? That's a dramatic difference. But again, remind yourself, we lived a great lifestyle. We traveled all over the world. We flew Many times we used our hacks on flying business class. We were on cruises. We stayed in nice hotels, 3-star, 4-star, even some 5-star. We certainly didn't just park ourselves in someplace super cheap for the entire year, because if we did, this would be even more dramatic. So you can see it's pretty wild, the difference. Then what I wanted to do was look at the overall averages, and this is something you can do in your head. So basically, you have a rough idea what your monthly expenses are, right? I have my monthly expenses. We're basically spending 43% of that. So again, just for examples, let's just say in Austin, it was costing us $8,000 a month for everything. For the same equivalent lifestyle, and I would argue better, it'd be roughly $3,200, because we're spending basically 44% of what we were spending before, which also flips around to saying before we were spending over 200% more. I gave you some examples here as well. If before you were spending $5,000 a month, when we put it into our digital nomadic lifestyle, that would be just 2,100. 10,000 a month, you're spending 4,000. So if you're really being hit hard with inflation, with affordability, with struggling, this is a lifestyle you should at least start to look into and consider, because there are ways to do it even way cheaper than we do. We run into people all the time who spend way less than we do. But again, on a percentage basis, I don't see any reason why in a lot of places you can't save between 25% on the low end and honestly up to 75% of what you're spending in the US, due to the high prices in the US and the fact that you have a lot of extra hidden expenses, right? You have to tip for everything. Most of the time when we're traveling international, we're not tipping at all, or it's 5 or 10%. Right, in the US, every single time I came back a week ago, every single screen I hit, it always would default at 25%. That adds a substantial amount onto your expenses. So rather than trying to constantly look at ways to, cut your budgets and to save money and never eat out and not have a good lifestyle, we're here to tell you there's a whole world out there, and a lot of places, pretty much all the places we've been, they cost less. So in summary, I definitely feel that you can save between 25% to 75% over your monthly spend that you're incurring right now, depending upon whether you do this part-time or full-time, and of course, what destinations that you choose. You can do it way less than we've done it. You certainly could spend more, but I just see no reason why the savings could not be significant for anybody who's looking into this lifestyle. And we've run across dozens of people in our travels, and there's people who've done it, like I said, way less than us. Some people have done it a bit more than us. There's so much flexibility when it comes to your choices of destination, what type of properties you want to stay in, what you're looking for, how long you want to stay. That's what I love about it, all the freedom, all the flexibility, and I think you will too. We've kept track of all of our expenses over a 2-year period, so these are real numbers, really our real results in this lifestyle. So with that, if you have any comments, questions, leave those down below. More than happy to see these. If you're already embarking on this lifestyle, would love to hear that in the comments, and we'll be back to you again soon with another video to help you with the digital nomadic lifestyle.